Omega follows the Alpha King into storm caverns, yet the storm bends around her breath alone. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main characters. The air was thick with tension as Lily Harris stepped into the shadow of the storm caverns, her breath shallow but steady. She had followed the Alpha King, Alexander Blackwood, into this treacherous place, a place no one dared to enter, let alone leave alive. The wind howled around them, the clouds darkening, as though the very sky was angry with their intrusion. Yet, in the midst of all this chaos, Lily remained strangely calm, as though something in her, something ancient and powerful, was at work. The storm seemed to bend away from her presence, the winds parting like the Red Sea at her mere breath. It was as if the very air obeyed her, a gift she didn't fully understand, but one that seemed to be growing stronger with each passing step. She glanced to her side at Alexander, his expression unreadable, his power palpable, yet there was something in his eyes that showed a flicker of curiosity. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked, his voice steady, but there was an edge to it. Lily, despite the uncertainty swirling inside her, nodded. "I don't have a choice, do I?" she replied. The Alpha King said nothing, but the briefest flash of understanding passed between them. He had been the ruler of these lands for years, a king feared by many, yet it was she, a simple Omega, who seemed to hold the key to something far greater than either of them could imagine. Together, they moved deeper into the caverns, the echoes of their footsteps merging with the distant rumblings of the storm. The further they went, the stronger the storm seemed to push against them. But Lily, with every breath, seemed to draw the very storm around her, a force of nature that she was slowly beginning to understand. As they reached the heart of the caverns, Alexander finally spoke again. "There's something different about you," he said, his voice softer now, almost as if he was trying to make sense of the phenomenon. Lily looked up at him, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that was almost unnatural. "I've always been different," she said, her voice steady and sure. "But it's more than just that. There's something in these caverns, something that calls to me." Alexander's eyes narrowed, his hand instinctively reaching for the hilt of his sword. "What do you mean?" he asked, his posture tense, but his gaze never leaving hers. Lily didn't answer immediately. She could feel it, deep inside her bones. The storm, the caverns, the power, it was all connected to her, to who she was meant to be. "I don't know yet," she admitted quietly. "But I feel it. It's like the storm knows me." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their conversation hanging in the air, the distant thunder rumbling as if to confirm her words. Finally, Lily took a deep breath and stepped forward, the storm swirling around her like a protective barrier. With every step, she felt herself becoming more attuned to the power within her. This storm, this force of nature, was hers to command. She wasn't just following Alexander into these caverns. She was meant to lead them out. And in that moment, as the storm bent around her, Lily knew that she was no longer just an Omega. She was something more. The question now was what she would do with the power she had yet to fully understand. "I can feel it now, deep within me. The storm is mine," Lily thought as they moved deeper into the cavern. Her breath was steady, calm, and the storm responded. Winds howled around her, but they bent and twisted, as if they were afraid to touch her skin. She wasn't sure how this was happening, but the sensation of control was intoxicating. The storm wasn't just a force of nature anymore, it was something she could shape. The further they walked, the more she understood. The Alpha King beside her was still quiet, his expression unreadable, but she could feel his gaze on her, always watching, always waiting for something. The air in the cavern was heavy with power, and she could see the way Alexander moved cautiously now, his steps almost hesitant as if he, too, was beginning to sense the change. As they reached the heart of the cavern, a massive stone formation rose before them, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. Lily's heart raced in response to the pull of the energy. She took a step forward, feeling the ground beneath her tremble. The storm seemed to roar louder as if answering a call, but it was now more than just the wind, it was a whisper, a voice in her mind. "You're ready," it seemed to say. "You were always meant to be here." Alexander stepped forward, his hand outstretched to stop her, his voice low. "Don't go too close, Lily," he warned. But Lily couldn't stop. Something in the air, something deep within her, urged her to approach. "I have to know," she whispered, her voice almost drowned out by the storm. Alexander's gaze softened, but his grip on her wrist tightened, pulling her back gently. "I know you feel it," he said. "But there's something here, something dangerous." "Dangerous," she repeated, her eyes narrowing. "You think I'm afraid of danger?" She jerked her wrist free from his grasp and stepped closer to the stone formation. The closer she got, the more intense the energy became, the more alive it felt. The storm bent to her will, swirling violently around her, but she felt no fear. Instead, she felt empowered, as if every element of nature was responding to her presence. She reached out, her fingers grazing the stone, and in an instant, the energy surged through her, a wave of power that left her breathless. The storm outside the cavern intensified, but Lily didn't flinch. It was hers to command. "Lily," Alexander's voice cracked through the storm, and she turned to face him. His eyes were wide, a mixture of awe and concern. "What is this?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. "This is who I am," she said quietly, her voice steady with a new confidence. "And this is only the beginning." The energy around her pulsed, and the storm roared in response. She felt it deep within her bones, a connection to something ancient, something primal. Alexander stood frozen, watching her, his lips parted as if he couldn't comprehend what was happening. But Lily understood now. She wasn't just an Omega. She was a force of nature, and the Alpha King Alexander was about to learn just how powerful she truly was. The storm outside raged, but inside the cavern, Lily's breath was the only thing that mattered. She was in control, and nothing, no one, could take that away from her. "I should have been afraid." The storm outside was an unrelenting force, tearing through the mountain range like an angry beast, but I wasn't. Instead, I felt a strange calmness wash over me. My breath steadied, as if the storm itself was waiting for me to give the order. Every gust of wind that howled outside seemed to bend around me, a force I could no longer ignore. I wasn't just a passive observer in this place anymore. I was in control. The energy from the cavern stone pulsed through my fingertips, filling me with a sense of power I had never known. The storm wasn't a threat anymore, it was an ally. I could feel it, swirling and shifting as if responding to my very thoughts. Alexander's gaze never left me. He stood a few paces away, his expression tense, unsure whether to reach out to me or hold back. "Lily," he called my name softly, his voice carrying a mixture of awe and uncertainty. "What are you doing?" I turned to face him, my eyes meeting his, and for the first time, I saw something more than the strong, silent Alpha King. I saw a man who was struggling to understand something far beyond his control. "I'm doing what I was always meant to do," I said, my voice calm, yet filled with a quiet certainty. "I'm not just your companion in this journey, Alexander. I'm part of it. I was always meant to be part of it." He took a step forward, his brow furrowed in confusion, but there was something in his eyes that softened, a realization that he couldn't quite put into words. "You're more than I thought," he said, almost to himself, though I caught every word. I nodded, stepping away from the stone formation, the storm swirling around me like a protective barrier. "More than anyone thought," I replied quietly. As I moved, the storm shifted with me, the winds picking up in a gentle current that seemed to guide me deeper into the cavern. Alexander followed, his presence still looming behind me, but now, there was a different energy between us. He no longer seemed like the Alpha King who commanded armies. Now, he seemed like a man caught in the wake of something far greater than himself. We walked in silence, the crackle of the storm providing the only sound, until we reached the heart of the cavern. There, in the center, lay an ancient pedestal covered in moss and glowing with a faint blue light. The energy in the air was thick, almost tangible, and I felt a pull toward it. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the cool stone of the pedestal, and immediately, a shock of energy coursed through me. The storm outside responded, roaring louder than before, as if answering the call. What is this? Alexander asked, his voice tight with uncertainty. I closed my eyes, feeling the power course through my veins, and when I opened them again, I saw him. A vision of something ancient, something primal, standing before me. This is where it begins, I whispered, my heart racing. The storm, the power, it's all connected to me. To us. Alexander stepped closer, his hand reaching out, but he didn't touch me. Instead, he stood just behind me, as if waiting for me to make the next move. I turned to face him, my gaze steady. You can't stop this, Alexander, I said, my voice firm. You never could. He swallowed, his eyes searching mine for answers, but there was something in the way I stood, something resolute, something that told him I had already made my choice. Then we move forward, he said quietly. And just like that, we did. Together, we stepped into the heart of the storm, not as two separate forces, but as something more, something unstoppable. I felt it, the shift, the moment when everything changed. The air around me was thick with power, and the storm that had been raging outside seemed to lose its ferocity, as if it, too, was waiting for me to lead. I could feel Alexander behind me, his presence a constant, yet now, it felt different. It wasn't just his power that filled the space, it was the weight of his uncertainty. He had always been the leader, the one in control, but now, as we stood together in the heart of the cavern, something had shifted between us. I turned, meeting his gaze. His eyes were still full of questions, but I could sense a hint of respect there, too, something I hadn't expected to feel so soon. Lily, he said, his voice quieter than before, more tentative. You're not like the others, are you? I shook my head slowly, my fingers still grazing the surface of the pedestal. No, I'm not, I replied, my voice steady, but with a strength that surprised even me. I never was. The storm outside howled again, but this time, it wasn't with the same intensity. It was as though the storm, like everything else, was aligning itself with me. The air crackled, charged with an energy I had only just begun to understand. The cavern, too, seemed to respond, the walls shifting slightly, the ground beneath us trembling as if acknowledging the change. Alexander stepped closer, his boots echoing softly on the stone floor. I could see the curiosity in his eyes, but there was something else now, too, something that bordered on awe. What do we do now? He asked. His tone had changed, no longer commanding, but uncertain, almost human. I smiled faintly, turning back to the pedestal. Now, I said, my voice growing stronger, we take the next step. Together. I reached out, my hand hovering over the stone. I could feel its power, pulsating beneath my fingertips, calling to me in a way that felt both familiar and new. It was as though the stone knew me, recognized me as its rightful heir. The moment my skin made contact with it, a rush of energy surged through me, and the storm outside erupted in a violent roar. But this time, I welcomed it. The wind, the lightning, the thunder, they were no longer enemies. They were part of me, just as the stone beneath my hand was. I could feel the raw power of it all, and I knew that I was no longer just an omega. I was something far greater. Alexander stood motionless, watching me, and I could sense the shift in him as well. His gaze had softened, the tension in his body melting away as he seemed to understand, even if only just a little. I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw him not as the Alpha King, but as a man standing beside me, unsure of what to do next. Are you with me? I asked, my voice steady, but with a hint of something deeper, something more vulnerable than I had ever allowed myself to show. Alexander's eyes met mine, and in that moment, I saw a flicker of something, acceptance. Not of me as an omega, but of me as a force and equal. I'm with you, he said quietly, his voice filled with conviction. Together, we stood in the heart of the storm that had bent to my will, and I knew that nothing would ever be the same. The world, the storm, the cavern, they were all mine to command. And now, Alexander and I were bound by something far greater than any crown or title could ever define. I could feel the weight of the world pressing down on us as we stood together in the heart of the cavern. The storm had calmed, but the air was still thick with power, crackling with energy that seemed to hum through my every nerve. Alexander stood beside me, his presence now a quiet force, but I could see the change in him. He had always been the leader, the one with the answers, but now, as the winds whispered around us, he was looking to me for guidance. It wasn't something I had ever expected, but here we were, bound by the storm, bound by something greater than either of us. What happens now? Alexander's voice broke the silence, his tone soft, almost uncertain. I turned to him, meeting his gaze. The powerful Alpha King, who had ruled with an iron fist, was now standing beside me, waiting for me to take the next step. I had no answers, not yet, but I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't alone. Now, we face whatever comes next, I said, my voice steady, my heart sure. We do it together. Alexander didn't speak right away, his eyes searching mine as if looking for something. Then, without another word, he nodded, the uncertainty still there, but something else, something more, shone through. For the first time, we were equals. The weight of the moment settled between us as we took our first steps together into the next phase of this journey. The cavern seemed to open before us, the walls shifting and moving, guiding us deeper. The storm had bent to my will, but there was still so much to understand. The energy within me was vast, but I was still learning to control it, to make sense of the forces I had awakened. And Alexander, as much as he had tried to control everything around him, was now part of that unknown. We walked in silence, the air around us thick with the power that flowed between us. We had no map, no guide, only the pull of something ancient and vast that seemed to guide our every step. As we descended further into the cavern, the stone underfoot became smoother, colder, as if we were moving into the heart of the earth itself. The winds outside had calmed to a gentle whisper, but the air inside the cavern grew warmer, charged with energy that seemed to hum beneath our feet. Do you feel that? Alexander asked, his voice low, almost reverent. I nodded, my senses heightened, my mind clear for the first time in a long while. Yes, I whispered. It's the storm. It's the power within us. We came to a stop in front of another stone formation, one that was different from the others. This one pulsed with a soft blue light, the stone shimmering as if alive. I reached out, my fingers grazing its surface, and immediately, the energy surged again, but this time, it was stronger, more intense. The storm outside raged once more, but it was distant, almost like a memory fading away. This is it, I said, my voice filled with awe and certainty. This is what I was meant to find. Alexander stood beside me, his gaze unwavering. And now, he asked, the question hanging in the air between us. Now, I said softly, we claim it. The storm outside raged on, but inside the cavern, we were calm, grounded, ready to face whatever came next. Together. I placed my hand on the stone, feeling the pulse of the energy within it. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced. The power was ancient, its rhythm matching the steady beating of my heart. For a moment, I closed my eyes, letting the force flow through me, allowing myself to become one with it. The air around us grew heavier, the temperature rising, but it felt like a warm embrace rather than the suffocating heat of a storm. It was the power of the cavern, the storm that I had once feared, now at my command. I could feel Alexander's presence beside me, steady and strong. He had always been the one to lead, to carry the weight of responsibility, but now, we were here together, standing on the threshold of something unimaginable. I opened my eyes to find him watching me. His gaze was intense, but there was a softness there, a quiet respect that hadn't been there before. Lily, he said, his voice low, almost reverent. What is this? What are we really doing here? I turned to face him, my fingers still resting on the stone. We're claiming it, I said, my voice steady, filled with certainty. This power, this storm, it's mine now. And it's ours. His brow furrowed slightly, as if trying to understand the full weight of what I was saying. But how? How can you control something like this? I smiled, the power inside me growing stronger with each passing second. I've always been different, Alexander. This is who I am. I can feel it. I always have. The energy in the cavern pulsed, as if answering my words. The stone beneath my fingers hummed, and the storm outside responded, calming to a soft breeze. But this is more than just control, Alexander said, taking a cautious step forward. This is something else. Something ancient. I nodded, my heart racing. Yes, it is. And it's more than just power. It's a connection, a bond. One that's been waiting for me. He stood beside me, watching the stone as the energy within it seemed to grow brighter, more intense. I could feel it too, the connection deepening, becoming something undeniable. The storm, once an enemy, was now a part of me, something I could bend and shape at will. Are you ready? I asked, turning to him. His eyes met mine, filled with an intensity one had never seen before. I am, he replied quietly, his voice filled with a quiet determination. Together, we stood before the stone, the storm, the power. The cavern seemed to open up before us, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us. This was it. This was the moment we had been waiting for. I placed my other hand on the stone, the energy flowing through me, through both of us, and in that instant, I understood. This wasn't just about power. It was about destiny, about the storm that had always been a part of me. And now, it was ours to command, together. The cavern trembled, the storm howling in response, but I was no longer afraid. The power inside me was alive, and it was mine to control. With a deep breath, I stepped forward, the storm following my every move, the stone beneath my hands glowing brighter than ever before. And I knew, without a doubt, that this was only the beginning. The power surged through me, stronger now, flowing like a river that could not be stopped. It was as if I had become one with the storm, with the earth, and with the very air that surrounded us. Alexander stood beside me, still and quiet, but I could feel his presence, a steadying force. I wasn't alone in this. Together, we were something new, something that had never been before. I could feel the weight of the storm, the responsibility of what we had awakened, but I didn't feel fear. Instead, I felt a deep sense of connection, of belonging. This was what I had been born for. This was my destiny. The cavern seemed to pulse around us, the walls trembling as if they, too, recognized the power that had been unlocked. The air crackled with energy, and I could see the storm outside growing calmer, the winds shifting, bending to our will. It was no longer an adversary. It was a companion, a part of me. Lily, Alexander spoke, his voice low but filled with a sense of wonder. What are we supposed to do now? I turned to face him, my gaze steady. The Alpha King, once the one who controlled everything, was now looking to me, waiting for me to take the lead. It was a shift I had never expected, but it felt right. We move forward, I said, my voice calm and sure. Together. We face whatever comes next, and we do it as equals. He met my gaze, his eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before, trust. For the first time, I could see him not as a king, but as a man standing beside me. I smiled faintly, feeling a wave of warmth rush through me. It was as if the energy of the cavern was responding to the shift in our relationship. The storm outside raged on, but inside the cavern, there was a calm that was unlike anything I had ever known. We were ready. Together, we would face the unknown. As we stepped forward, the air around us seemed apart, the storm bending around us like a barrier protecting us from the world outside. It was as if the very elements were recognizing our bond, our shared power. Alexander's presence beside me was a constant, but now, it felt like we were no longer two separate forces. We were one. I reached out, my hand brushing against the stone once more. The energy inside me flared, responding to the touch, and I could feel it guiding me, showing me the way. This wasn't just about power anymore. It was about something deeper, something that connected us all. The storm outside howled, but inside, we were calm. We were ready. Together, we had unlocked something ancient, something that had been waiting for us. And now, we would face whatever came next, not as separate forces, but as one. As we walked deeper into the cavern, the path ahead seemed clearer. The storm was no longer something we had to fight. It was a part of us, and together, we would shape the future. I turned to Alexander, my eyes meeting his. Are you ready? I asked. He nodded, his gaze never leaving mine. I'm with you, he said quietly, his voice filled with resolve. Together, we moved forward, stepping into the unknown, ready for whatever lay ahead. I could feel the weight of our shared power as we moved deeper into the cavern, the storm still whispering around us. It was no longer a danger, no longer something to fear. It was part of us, part of our connection. Alexander walked beside me, his presence strong, yet now it felt as though we were both walking into something unknown, together. The air was thick with energy, and every step we took seemed to bring us closer to whatever awaited at the heart of this place. The walls of the cavern seemed to pulse with life, the stone itself alive with the power we had unlocked. The path ahead was unclear, but it felt as though we were being drawn towards something we couldn't yet see, but could feel in our bones. I reached out, my hand grazing the surface of the stone beside me. The energy surged again, a gentle wave that seemed to soothe and invigorate at the same time. It was like a current I could no longer resist. "We're getting closer," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. Alexander glanced at me, his eyes searching mine. "Closer to what?" he asked, his voice steady, but with a trace of uncertainty. I took a deep breath, feeling the storm around us respond, as if it were listening to my every thought. "To the heart of this power," I replied. "To whatever it is that binds us together." We continued walking, the air growing warmer, the storm outside now nothing more than a distant rumble. There was no fear now, only a strange sense of anticipation. I didn't know what we would find, but I knew we were meant to find it together. The deeper we went, the more the energy around us seemed to guide us. The path was no longer something we had to choose, it was something that had already been set before us. The stone walls seemed to open up, creating a vast, open space before us. At the center of the cavern was a pedestal, taller than any of the surrounding stone formations. It was covered in a soft, glowing light, and the air around it seemed to hum with power. "This is it," I said softly, my heart racing. "This is what we came for." We stepped closer, the pedestal beckoning us with its light. I reached out, my hand hovering above it. The energy that surrounded it was overwhelming, but it felt familiar, as if I had always known it was meant for me. "Lily, be careful," Alexander warned, his voice tense. But I didn't hesitate. I had come this far, and I knew this was the moment. With a steady breath, I placed my hand on the pedestal. Immediately, a surge of energy rushed through me, more powerful than anything I had ever felt. The storm outside roared, but now, it was as if the world had paused, holding its breath. The power within me grew, the storm outside swirling into a cyclone of energy that bent to my will. I could feel Alexander's presence beside me, steady, grounding me, but I knew in that moment that I was no longer the Omega I had once been. I was something more, something that had always been waiting to emerge. "Lily," Alexander said, his voice low with awe. "What is happening?" I turned to him, my eyes meeting his. "It's happening," I said softly. "We've awakened it. This power, this storm, it's ours to command. Together." The storm raged, but we were no longer its victims. We were its masters, and together, we would shape the future. The pedestal beneath my hand pulsed with life, and I knew that whatever came next, we were ready. The storm bent around us, and the world outside faded into the background. There was only us, only the power we had unlocked, and the future that awaited. I stood there, my hands still resting on the pedestal, the energy surrounding me like a storm that had become my own. The power was overwhelming, yet strangely comforting, as if it had always been a part of me. The storm outside was no longer a threat, it was a reflection of the power I now controlled. Alexander stood beside me, his presence steady and strong, but there was something new in his eyes and understanding, perhaps even a sense of reverence. The cavern around us hummed with energy, the walls vibrating with a power that had been dormant for so long. I could feel it in my bones, in the very air I breathed. This was it. This was the moment that would change everything. "Lily," Alexander's voice broke through the storm in my mind. It was calm, but there was a hint of something else in it, a mix of awe and caution. "What happens now?" I turned to face him, my heart racing with the realization of what we had done, what we had unlocked. "Now," I said softly, my voice steady, "we claim it. We claim this power." Alexander nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving mine. He had always been the one in control, the Alpha King, but now, for the first time, we were equals in this. The storm raged outside, but it no longer mattered. We were no longer at the mercy of the forces around us. We were the storm. I felt a deep connection to Alexander, stronger than anything I had ever felt before. It wasn't just the power that bound us, it was something deeper, something that had been waiting for us to find it. "We do this together," I said, my voice firm, unwavering. He looked at me, his expression softened, the weight of the moment finally settling on him. "Together," he agreed. With those words, everything changed. The cavern trembled once more, but this time, it was in response to our shared power. The energy that had been swirling around us suddenly focused, converging on the pedestal, on us. The storm outside intensified, but now it was like a symphony, the winds, the lightning, the thunder all moving in harmony with the force inside me. I could feel the power, the connection, flowing through every inch of my body. This wasn't just about controlling the storm anymore. This was about becoming one with it. We were no longer separate entities. We were the Alpha King and the Omega, bound together by the storm itself, by a force greater than anything we had ever known. "Are you ready?" I asked, looking at him, my heart pounding in my chest. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw not the king, but the man, someone who had come to understand that we were not so different after all. "I'm ready," he said quietly, his voice filled with certainty. And with that, we stepped forward, the storm parting around us as we moved toward the future, ready to face whatever came next. Together, we would shape it. Together, we would control it.